Yeah, we said about 20 minutes or so ago that police would be moving in to remove and arrest those who are blocking Victoria Street here in central London. That is now happening. You can see the latest of those protesters just being carried away. This is part of the routine. They will do everything possible to make it as difficult for the officers in being non-compliant, so that the officers have to bodily, as you can see, lift them from the roadway and carry them to the van. And what's been happening further down the road is that they've been ungluing those who've glued themselves to the roadway, specialist teams involved in doing that. And now they're moving in. A lot of officers here, more than 50 plus officers, who would much, I'm sure, rather be in their own boroughs policing the capital, but are here instead dealing with these protests, one of many protests which have been happening. There's another woman who's being arrested and shouting to those as she heads towards the van itself. Say another one who clearly has lost the ability to walk at this stage. And this is the kind
just update us. You were telling us there's actually a specialist unit there who are responsible for actually ungluing these people. They've got the sort of various chemicals and rubber gloves and so on.
Yes, that's right. We'll take you back down to the roadway itself. So what we have down here effectively is the carriageway that heads down to Westminster, the protesters there, and the specialist teams who removed the protesters on the other carriageway heading up towards Victoria Station will move on to this group now, and this will be the next arrest phase. And once they've been removed, we will have an opportunity then, thankfully, for those who have been disrupted in this part of central London to have this main route open again for people heading to and from the Westminster area. What was interesting, Mark, that we noticed really during this particular protest was 8 different altercations where members of the public were up here remonstrating with the protesters, and I think that's indicative of a general loss of patience with these protests and the disruption that they're causing to people and their lives, their everyday business that they're trying to go about here in central London. And it's prompted the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, to push for new legislation which will be introduced into the Commons this week, we're told, which will aim to make it much tougher for these protesters to carry out this kind of disruptive tactic, and it will include the likes of potentially jail terms for those who breach injunctions. You'll remember, of course, when we had Insulate Britain a year or so ago carrying out all of these protests around the M25 and other main arterial routes. There were injunctions brought out. They breached those injunctions multiple times, and then a significant number of the protesters were then heading off to spend some time in jail. That appears, as far as Insulate Britain is concerned, to have had some effect on Insulate Britain. We don't hear as much from them these days, but of course that particular group has gone quiet for a while. This particular group, Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion, have taken up the environmental cause and they're here, and they say they're going to cause much more disruption like this in the coming days and weeks. We got yesterday disruption at an Aston Martin garage in West London on Pall Mall. This morning, of course, the QE2 bridge, the Dartford crossing, was closed for a while because we had protesters who climbed up on the bridge itself. Clearly very dangerous for them, but dangerous as well for the specialist officers that have to go up and try to talk them down from this bridge. They're unapologetic, though. They say we're facing a climate emergency, and they're going to continue with this kind of disruptive tactics. You can see police have moved in again to remove another of the protesters, and just doing a head count now, there are 4 protesters remaining on the roadway as 2 more are taken away here. So 4 on the roadway. So hopefully within the next 5 to 10 minutes we should get Victoria Street open again. But of course the police know that this roadway will be open, but it may only be a matter of hours before the next area is targeted by Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion and their associated groups.
Mark, looking at the amount of time that this process takes, obviously there's a well-rehearsed procedure they go through. People are waiting in that traffic around Parliament Square for some time. And one reflects on what Sir Mark Rowley, the Met Commissioner, was saying about this test of what they call significant disruption.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that this is a significant disruption. Of course, they're blocking the King's Highway as well. There are offences that are being committed. The difficulty is that the offences that are being committed are very minor in the scheme of things. So what happens is really a revolving door of people getting arrested, getting charged with a minor offence effectively, going to the magistrates' court, being slapped on the wrist, being fined a small amount perhaps, and then they're released and go on to continue this cycle. This is why the Home Secretary now wants this tougher legislation to go through Parliament, which would carry with it jail terms. She believes that that would be the type of disruptive tactic, or at least that would be the power that would allow police to disrupt this tactic, that they believe that, many people want to carry out these protests, of course, but not as many people are clearly willing to go to jail for that. So you see this gentleman here just being patted down, checked for any potential weapons, not really expecting to find that on a climate change protester, but this is the process. They're patted down, checked out, then they're put into the van and then taken away. And as these 2 are processed here, as I say, Mark, another 4 further down the road here on Victoria Street. So hopefully, as I say, within a matter of 5 to 10 minutes, we should have this main thoroughfare open again to traffic.